Well endowed? What does that mean? By the look on his face, I don't want to know.
Do you want me to tell you?
No.
Ethan Plath is the oldest son of Kim and Barry Plath, the parents at the center of TLC's Welcome to Plathville, which premiered in 2019. The show followed the Plaths, a large family of 10 children raised under a strict, conservative, Christian fundamentalist lifestyle in rural Cairo, Georgia, as some of the older children began pushing against the boundaries they were raised with. Ethan, along with his then-wife Olivia, quickly became the emotional center of the series. Their marriage, which began in October 2018, represented something the show leaned into hard: a young couple caught between the sheltered world they came from and the modern world they were trying to step into. The family has also carried real grief. Kim and Barry's son Joshua died in 2008 following a farm accident, a loss the family has spoken about on camera, a detail that adds real weight to a show that can otherwise feel like pure tabloid drama. That loss is part of why so many longtime viewers don't see the Plaths as just reality TV characters. They see a family that has actually been through something, which makes every subsequent chapter, divorces, breakups, estrangements, hit differently for the audience than typical reality show drama. Ethan and Olivia's marriage became one of the show's central storylines for years. Viewers watched them navigate tension between Olivia and Ethan's parents, relocate from Cairo, Georgia to Tampa, Florida, and try to build an identity as a couple separate from the family Ethan was raised in. But that strain never fully resolved. In 2023, after 5 years of marriage, Olivia and Ethan announced they were separating. The divorce was finalized in early 2025, with the settlement reportedly including Ethan taking ownership of certain investments and his vintage cars, while Olivia kept her company and their vehicle. That divorce alone would have been a major storyline for most reality shows. For the Plaths, it was just the beginning of the next chapter. He built a life on camera. He got married on camera. He fell apart on camera. And now, after months of silence, speculation, and a relationship that ended almost as publicly as it began, Ethan Plath is finally addressing what happened, and reports suggest fans did not see this coming. If you've followed Welcome to Plathville even casually, you know Ethan's story has never been simple. He was the oldest son in one of reality television's most talked-about families, a young man raised inside a strict, isolated upbringing who married young. Very publicly fell apart from that marriage, and then, just as publicly, tried to rebuild a life for himself outside of it. Now, after his divorce from Olivia Plath, a very public relationship with Teegan Nichols, and an equally public breakup, Ethan is speaking again, and the internet is reacting. Before we get into exactly what's being said and why it's generating so much buzz, we need to rewind. Because to understand why this moment matters to so many people, you have to understand where Ethan Plath came from, what he's already survived in front of millions of viewers, and why every relationship update from him turns into a cultural event. Stick around, because by the end of this video you'll understand not just what's happening now, but why so many Americans have found themselves emotionally invested in the life of a guy who, 6 years ago, most of the country had never heard of. Here's where things get current. After the divorce from Olivia was finalized, Ethan didn't stay out of the spotlight for long. Around late 2024, reports and social posts indicated Ethan had met someone new. By January 2025, he made it official, sharing photos on Instagram introducing a new girlfriend to his followers without initially naming her. Fans quickly identified her as Teegan Nichols, and the relationship became a major storyline heading into the next season of Welcome to Plathville. Their relationship played out largely in public, through the show, through social media, and through the constant commentary of a fan base that has spent years dissecting every detail of Ethan's love life. But it didn't last. Reports throughout 2026 indicate the relationship ended, with Teegan stating on the show that she was no longer with Ethan. This despite reports that he had driven out to the Oshkosh and Appleton area of Wisconsin in an attempt to win her back. According to those reports, the reconciliation attempt did not succeed, and the two remained broken up. Not long after, in May 2026, Ethan was reportedly spotted with a woman who was not his sister or Teegan, fueling a fresh wave of speculation about his personal life. That same month, Entertainment outlets reported that Teegan had soft-launched a new relationship of her own on Instagram, with a man reportedly named Sean Forlenza. Even as Welcome to Plathville's current season continued airing storylines about her and Ethan's relationship, a reminder of just how far behind real life the broadcast timeline on these shows can run. Now, layered on top of the breakup drama, there's a separate and important thread. Ethan has also faced public criticism this year that isn't about his own love life at all, but about how he's shown up in the middle of his family's. During a 2025 episode, Ethan and his brother Micah appeared to confront their sister Lydia's now husband Zach Wise during a proposal moment, with Ethan reportedly objecting to the engagement and questioning whether the couple knew each other well enough to get married. Lydia later addressed the incident directly on social media, defending her relationship and pushing back on what she called gossip, and many fans sided firmly with her, criticizing Ethan and Micah's behavior as inappropriate for grown siblings to interject into another adult's relationship decisions. So when people talk about Ethan breaking his silence, it's worth pausing here and asking a fair question. Why does any of this matter? Ethan Plath isn't a politician, an executive, or a public official. He's a cast member on a cable reality show. But there are real reasons this story keeps generating attention, and they say as much about the media landscape as they do about Ethan himself. First, there's the built-in audience. Welcome to Plathville has run for multiple seasons, which means viewers have watched Ethan grow from a sheltered 19-year-old into a man in his mid-20s navigating divorce, dating, and family conflict, all in real time. That kind of longitudinal, parasocial familiarity is rare, and it creates genuine emotional investment. People don't just watch Ethan's story. Many feel like they've watched him grow up. Second, there's the financial and career reality of reality television. For cast members like Ethan, public relationship drama isn't incidental to the show. It's often central to why the show continues to get renewed, and by extension, central to his continued income and visibility. That doesn't make his feelings or relationships fake, but it does mean there's a structural incentive for these storylines to keep unfolding publicly rather than privately, which is part of why Ethan breaks his silence headlines recur so often across entertainment outlets and social media. Third, and maybe most simply, audiences are drawn to stories about people trying to break away from restrictive upbringings and figure out who they are on their own terms. Ethan's arc, from a controlled, insular home life to a public divorce to a series of very modern, very online relationships, taps into something a lot of viewers relate to on a personal level, even if their own lives look nothing like his. Fan reaction across TikTok, Instagram, and entertainment forums has been intense and, frankly, divided. A significant portion of the conversation has centered less on Ethan's romantic life and more on his conduct within the family, particularly the criticism he and Micah received for their behavior during Lydia's engagement. Comments on that story were pointed, with fans defending Lydia's right to make her own decisions and criticizing her brothers for what many viewers described as controlling behavior. On the relationship side, reaction has been more mixed, equal parts sympathy and skepticism. Some fans have expressed genuine hope that Ethan finds stability after a difficult few years. Others have grown more critical over time, questioning his readiness for commitment given the pattern of a finalized divorce followed by a high-profile relationship that also didn't last. TikTok in particular has become a hub for real-time theorizing, with creators dissecting Instagram unfollows, posting speculation about who he's been seen with, and debating whether his relationships are genuine or shaped by the demands of being on a reality show. What's clear is that this isn't a fringe conversation. It's sustained, recurring, and cuts across multiple platforms, which is exactly why headlines using phrases like "breaks his silence" keep performing well. There's a built-in audience actively looking for updates. So what happens next? Based on what's publicly known, a few things seem likely. Welcome to Plathville is continuing to air new seasons, and given the show's pattern, it's reasonable to expect Ethan's personal life, whatever direction it takes next, will continue to be part of the storyline, whether that's addressing the Teegan breakup more directly, addressing the criticism from the Lydia and Zach situation, or introducing a new chapter of his life to viewers. It's also worth noting that the family dynamics at play here are bigger than Ethan alone. Kim and Barry Plath's own divorce, announced in 2024 after 24 years of marriage, has reshaped the entire family structure the show is built around. With the parents separated and multiple adult children navigating their own breakups, marriages, and public disagreements, Ethan's story doesn't exist in isolation. It's one thread in a much larger, ongoing family narrative that TLC has built years of programming around. For Ethan specifically, the bigger question fans keep asking is less about any single relationship and more about whether he's able to step back from inserting himself into his siblings' choices, something that's become a real point of tension within the family's public image. How he handles that going forward may end up shaping his relationship with his siblings and with the audience more than any dating headline will. It's easy to talk about all of this in terms of headlines and social media reactions, but it's worth remembering there's a real person at the center of it. Ethan Plath was raised in an environment with strict rules about dating, media, and independence, and much of his adult life has played out as a very public process of figuring out who he is outside of that upbringing, while also processing the loss of a brother, the end of his parents' marriage, and the end of his own marriage, all on camera. That's a lot for anyone to carry, and it's fair to acknowledge that some of the criticism directed at him, particularly around his role in the Lydia and Zach situation, comes from genuine concern about boundaries within a family that's still, in many ways, learning what healthy independence looks like after a very controlled childhood. At the same time, the sustained public interest in his dating life reflects something real too. A lot of viewers are simply rooting for someone they've watched struggle to find stability, and they want to see him land somewhere good. Whatever comes next for Ethan, it's happening the same way everything else in his adult life has, in public, under a level of scrutiny most people never have to deal with while sorting out their own relationships and family conflicts. That's where things stand right now with Ethan Plath, a story that's really about a lot more than one headline, and one that we'll clearly be revisiting as Welcome to Plathville continues and as more details come out. If you've been following the Plath family story for a while, drop a comment and let us know what you think Ethan should do next. There are moments in reality television when a cast member says something that changes the way viewers look at an entire story. And then there are moments when the most powerful thing a person can say is not something explosive at all. It is the simple admission that something is over. For Ethan Plath, that moment came after years of complicated relationships, a highly publicized marriage, a painful separation, a stalled divorce process, and a relationship that appeared to offer him a second chance at love. But now, looking at everything that has happened, one thing has become impossible to ignore. Ethan's story has changed dramatically. The man viewers first met on Welcome to Plathville was a young husband trying to navigate a world that was changing faster than he could understand it. He had grown up in an unusually sheltered environment, married Olivia Plath while they were both very young, and gradually found himself caught between the expectations of his family, his marriage, his religious upbringing, and the outside world. Years later, that marriage is officially over. The divorce is final. The relationship that Ethan once described as deeply meaningful with Teegan Nichols became another emotional question mark. And Season 8 showed viewers an Ethan who seemed to be struggling with something much bigger than simply deciding who he wanted to date. He was trying to figure out who he was after the life he thought he would have disappeared. That distinction matters. Because if you only look at the headlines, Ethan's story can seem simple. He got married. The marriage ended. He found someone else. That relationship became complicated. He moved. He tried to repair the relationship. And eventually the situation changed again. But underneath those headlines is a much more complicated story about growing up in public, learning how to communicate after years of living within strict family expectations, and trying to make adult decisions while millions of strangers are watching. And that is why Ethan's recent comments have generated so much attention. Not necessarily because he revealed one enormous secret, but because his words provide another piece of a story that has been unfolding for years. And before we get into what Ethan has said, we need to understand how he got here. Because this story did not begin with Teegan. It did not begin with the divorce paperwork. And it certainly did not begin with the latest season. It began with a young man named Ethan Plath growing up in a family whose lifestyle would eventually become the foundation of one of TLC's most closely watched reality shows. When Welcome to Plathville premiered in 2019, viewers were introduced to the Plath family and their unusually sheltered upbringing. The series focused on Barry and Kim Plath and their children, portraying a family environment built around strict rules, conservative Christian values, limited exposure to mainstream entertainment, and a highly controlled childhood. Ethan was the oldest son. From the beginning, he stood out because viewers could see that he was curious about the world beyond the boundaries of his upbringing. That curiosity became one of the central themes of his story. He was not simply learning about television, music, technology, or ordinary teenage experiences that many Americans take for granted. He was learning how to make decisions for himself. And that process became especially important when Olivia entered his life. Ethan and Olivia married in October 2018, before the television series premiered. Their relationship became one of the emotional centers of Welcome to Plathville. At first, viewers were watching what appeared to be a young couple attempting to build a life together while navigating complicated family relationships. But over time, the differences between Ethan and Olivia became increasingly visible. Their disagreements were not merely about ordinary marital problems. They were also about family boundaries, religion, communication, personal independence, and the enormous question of how much influence Ethan's upbringing should continue to have over his adult life. That made their marriage particularly compelling to viewers. Because Ethan was not simply trying to save a marriage. He was also trying to reconcile two different versions of himself. There was the Ethan who had been raised within the Plath family's highly structured environment. And then there was the Ethan who was discovering adulthood on his own terms. Those two versions did not always agree. And Olivia often became the person standing directly in the middle of that conflict. As the seasons progressed, tensions between Ethan and Olivia intensified. Their relationship became one of the most discussed storylines in the series. Eventually, the marriage could not survive. In October 2023, Ethan and Olivia publicly announced their separation after approximately 5 years of marriage. But even that announcement did not immediately bring an end to their legal relationship. The divorce process became another chapter of the story. And that chapter lasted much longer than many viewers expected. The legal timeline surrounding Ethan and Olivia's divorce is important because it helps explain Ethan's later frustration. The couple initially filed divorce paperwork in February 2024. At that time, the filing cited an irretrievable breakdown of the marriage. But the legal process did not simply move from filing to final judgment. According to later reporting, the initial divorce proceeding was closed administratively in 2024 after deficiencies in the filing were not addressed. That meant that although Ethan and Olivia were already publicly separated, their marriage was not legally finished. For someone attempting to move forward, that distinction can be enormous. Emotionally, the relationship may be over. Practically, life may already have moved in another direction. But legally, the relationship still exists. And that became especially important when Ethan began another serious relationship. By 2025, viewers were introduced to Teegan Nichols. Ethan publicly introduced Teegan during Season 7 of Welcome to Plathville. When Season 8 premiered in March 2026, Ethan's romantic life was no longer the simple success story some viewers might have expected. His relationship with Teegan had ended. Yet Ethan did not appear emotionally ready to walk away from it. This became one of the most revealing aspects of the season. During the Season 8 premiere, Ethan discussed the breakup and explained that he still felt a powerful connection with Teegan. He described their relationship in emotional and spiritual terms and indicated that he felt there was unfinished business between them. That phrase matters. Unfinished business. It tells us that Ethan did not view the breakup as a clean ending. He saw a possibility, maybe even an obligation to try again. And that belief would influence some of his biggest decisions during the season. But there was another development happening at essentially the same time. The legal barrier that had remained over Ethan's personal life was finally disappearing. In February 2026, Ethan and Olivia's divorce was officially finalized in Minnesota. Court records reported by multiple outlets showed that their marriage was legally terminated. The settlement also included a